Fancy seeing you here. Want to play some D&D? Nah, I'm just kidding. So in the last episode of the show, I'm going to make this one quick because I'm outside in the less than wild. In the last episode, we went over what the club actually did, right? We started our trek, traveling back out to the west, and the party ran into a couple of random encounters, nothing too important, before discovering a camp of orcs. These orcs, numerous and belligerent. If you catch that reference, they're pretty cool. But the party were able to fight a group of these traveling orcs and then make their way back to town. Unfortunately, we ran into an issue. We were running out of money. So we had to get a little creative. So why don't we leave this wonderful, totally not seedy spot. Let's go to the basement. Come on. Hello? Welcome back. I don't have any fancy updates for the basement here, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. We're just gonna jump right on in on this dungeon adventure. The last thing that I had done was I asked everybody for some advice and some suggestions of what they think the party could do in order to scrounge up some extra money. Unfortunately, with Todrick being a hungry guy and the party having some real tough luck with getting around and finding something to eat, I've kind of reached a point where it seems like we're running out of cash, right? So I went on to the Facebook groups, my usual, the OSR page and the Old School Essentials page, and asked around. I got a very interesting list of suggestions. Everything from crime, you know, which, judging by the fact our party has 2 evil characters in it, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised, as well as people suggesting the world's oldest profession. To the point somebody quoted the lyrics to Roxanne by the Police, which, anyway, so the party have gotten a lot of suggestions to do jobs and stuff like that, but, you know, I've had some interesting suggestions come along the way too, some ideas that have kind of changed how I'm viewing this whole project. You know, playing old school games like this, it's very different than the mentality of something like modern D&D, if you want to call it that. You know, things like 5th edition, where you got a lot of characters that are, sort of the main characters, I guess. You know, the idea that, like, if we're gonna go fight, where it's gonna be the 4 characters in the party. Whereas in something like old school, when we're so used to hiring mercenaries and soldiers to help us out, it's more this idea that, like, it's, I don't want to say it's more authentic or realistic, but there's this idea that, you know, like, I think about the orc camp, right? I remember in the last episode I said, I was like, we'd have to come back when we're more powerful to handle this, but I think what I really meant, and thank you to my friend over here who suggested this, you know, this is the kind of thing where we would have to have the money to do this, because we'd have to hire a small militia to come with us, go kick these orcs out of here, and go plunder what's ever in the bottom of this little castle it was, or fort. In any case, right now, I think what makes sense for the party is we got to figure out our food situation, at least a little bit, and then maybe we start considering what we could do for money. I imagine there's some room for us to do odd jobs around the town and do some sort of questy kind of stuff, and, you know, there's that part of me that's really itching to go do a Dungeness crawl. There's a part of me that thinks if we just push into the forest to the to the east, we will definitely have a chance for, you know, some Dungeness place where we can make a bunch of loot, right? So there's a part of me that thinks we can spend a couple days here. We'll catch some food. We'll send out Tamrind. It's always Tamrind, you know. But anytime, we're gonna send Tamrind out to go hunting. He's gonna hopefully get enough food to feed the party for a couple days. And if we do this, I'm thinking that maybe we'll be able to set out on this adventure free of charge. Meaning we're not going to have to buy more rations and we can just go out there. So without further ado, come on back over here. Let's talk about this, okay? All right. Another thing I did, I made a little card with the D6 Oracle on it from Yum DM. You'll never guess where I got the cardboard. Anyway. Okay. So Now that we've got this ahead of us, let's go ahead and figure out what our hunting situation is going to look like. I'm thinking that because Todrick got wounded when fighting the orcs, we're going to have to stay in town for a day anyway, just to heal up. But I think that it only makes sense that Tammin goes head on out and goes hunting. So it says that if he goes hunting, he succeeds on a 5 and 6. So let's get rolling on that. So we succeed on a 5 and 6, but I don't really have many. Well, let's just say I don't have much direction to go off of what, you know, hunting actually entails for food. I know foraging suggests that we'd be able to get enough food for a party to be sustained for 1d6 people, right? So, but hunting, on the other hand, it seems like that would give us more food. So I'm thinking that maybe, and maybe this is terrible, maybe this is a silly idea, but I'm thinking if we go hunting, that might be enough for the party to have food for, I don't know, maybe we can find some system to make sense of this. I almost feel like what we could do is we could say that it's 1d4 food for the week, right? Like 1d4 weeks of food for the party. Now, again, I recognize that might be a little OP, but I think that there's a part of me that's like, I mean, if you hunt down and kill a couple of elk, I mean, that's a lot of food for our party, right? So, you know what, let's even bump it up. We're gonna do a D6 of food, D6 people's weekly rations when going hunting, okay? So it's a 1 through 5 chance. Okay, so naturally we spend our first day, one day out here hunting. And you know, there's a part of me that thinks that maybe we should also roll for random encounters while we're out there, but I don't know if I want to just go killing Tammin like that. So we're gonna keep hunting in the direct vicinity of the town. I'm gonna say there's a 1 in 6 chance of a random encounter. Okay, cool. So now day 2 of hunting. Let's go ahead and see what we get. 3. Okay, so we do catch something, and we get exactly 4 meals. Perfect. So we get 4 people's worth. 4 weeks. 4 individual weeks of rations for the party. Okay, so I'm imagining that when he's out there, he probably comes across some deer that are sprinting around. We're able to shoot them with a bow, or maybe even using those javelin that he has, which is almost more terrifying that he's killing them with javelin. Probably a very messy time. But okay, I'm gonna add that to our bags. Let's go. Okay. So I think it's also safe to say that the party probably worked security at the tavern, the Elvish Tower, and while working security, they probably earned upkeep enough to be able to take a bottle of whiskey with them on their travels, so that Todrick will at least be appeased in his gluttonous ways. So I think now it's time for the party to make their way out of here. Okay, so I'm going to start with the weather, because I always find a way to forget to do the weather first. Let's see, on Dungeon, our weather says it is a moderate, you know, that's kind of wild. It's only a high of 53 degrees. Pretty cold, but no clouds. So this first day of travel, we know on horseback we get 48 miles, right? And on day 1, it's going to be a clear sky day. We're gonna go ahead and roll for random encounters out here outside the town. You know, it's interesting. Yeah, I'll just roll for outside the village, so we'll give it a 1 in 6. Cool. Okay, so we're safe on the way out of here. Now, I'm gonna show the map right here, and you can see that traveling out of the town, we're gonna start in our marsh, we're gonna move into the hills. The hills are gonna cost us, we'll make sure I get this right. I always forget these things, you know? But 33% slower, so that first day of travel, we're going to start off with 8 miles. But first, before we do that, let's see if we can forage. 1 or a 2, that's a 1, so we get food for 2 people. So we only have to make up 2 meals for the day. Ooh, a pink marker. I don't know how that... okay, so we got 2 meals for the day, and 2 we have to make up for. Very well. Random encounters, we already saw that. We got nothing, so let's get moving. So the first day of travel, we start off, we've got our initial 8 miles of movement. Moving then into the plains. It's going to be an additional 6 because there's no penalty there. I'm carving straight to the east. We're going through that forest, and I want to see what's out there. Moving into the next tile, it will be forest. And forest itself is 33% slower, so we're gonna go up to 22. And then we're gonna move northeast again, moving into another bit. So that brings us to 30 miles of horsey riding. And we are now at a point where we can see what's out there. So let's go ahead and roll for it. I have a sneaky suspicion that we're gonna get some good rolls today. So again, on the D20 and the D8, a 1 on the D8 means we get something, some special thing. Now, somebody posted a suggestion that maybe this D8 roll can go up by 1. I'm actually going to post their comment right here. Thanks for the comment and the idea. I think what we can do is for every day that we don't run into something, maybe we'll boost this up. So what'll happen is, like, if it's day 3, it'll be 2 days past the first day. So a 3 in 8 will be a random thing until we set off a random location, right? Okay, so let's see what we got. Forest becomes, ooh, I believe that means it becomes the plains. Traveling into the plains costs us 6, so we go to 36. And now from the plains, we got 11 and 3, so it goes back to forest. That'll charge us another 8, so that brings us to 44, and that will be the end of the first day of travel. Okay, let me go ahead and put that forest right there. Okay, so on this first day, we only have to eat 2 of our rations, and I imagine the party are in pretty good spirits, especially after seeing that their buddy Tammond can actually hunt and he's not all just, you know, making it up. I have a feeling that the party are probably pretty excited. I'm gonna roll for weather for day 2. And I got, ooh, a severe thunderstorm. Huh, well, we just entered the forest, and there's a part of me that thinks we are not gonna travel during the severe thunderstorm. It reduces our visibility, it reduces a lot of things, and it kind of makes traveling a pain in the butt. So I'm thinking that maybe day 2, we will just chill here in our spot in our little forest camp, and we're just gonna wait it out. Normally in the forest, we have a chance of a wandering monster on a 2 in 6. So I think that because the party are just gonna be hanging tight, it'll be a 1 in 6 chance. Okay, and since the party are not gonna go out hunting, this is just gonna cost us our full 4, so that'll be 6. So day 2 is a total wash, no pun intended with the rain, and we will just hang out here until the next day. Okay, the next day's weather, it is windy with a high of 79. I can only imagine what these people's sinuses must be like. So I feel like that's how you can tell that I'm a big nerd, is my initial thought with this is the temperature change. Can you imagine what they must feel like with their nostrils? All right, so a 2 in 6 chance of a random encounter. Cool, random encounter. Before we do that, I'm also gonna roll for foraging, 1 and 2. Okay, so no food, but of course, random encounter. Okay, let's see what we got, shall we? We're gonna do a D8 and a D20, as always. And we're gonna hope for the best. Oh, well, it kind of helps if there's a D20 in there. Whoop. All right, I'm gonna count the 5. All right, so that gives us humanoids. And with a 16 on table F, humanoids, and it's a 16. So 16 gives us, I should have known, ogres. You know, I'm thinking at this point, these smelly old ogres, man, you know, I can't get any freaking peace from these ogres. I love it. The book literally opens to the page. Okay, cool. So number appearing, let's see how many ogres we run into. On a 6. 5. 5 ogres. Oh boy. So they spot us on a 1 through 3. Cool. They're surprised on a 1 through 3, so they're not surprised. And then do they see us? we are only surprised on a 1. Okay, so we're not surprised. They're not surprised either. Okay, rough. And we're in the forest, so that's at least good on that end. We might be able to get out of here since we've got our horses. But, you know, this might be another one of those situations where we feel like, actually, screw these guys. I'm gonna say, because we have the club, And because we're kind of notorious with these ogres, I'm going to give us a hefty penalty on this reaction. Zion obviously gives us a +1, but I'm going to give us a -2 overall. So on 10, -2 brings us to 8, so they're neutral and uncertain of us. I imagine the party see the ogres and they're probably anticipating some sort of a rumble here, and they're just like waiting for whoever makes the first move. The ogres see the party don't back down, and again, they sit there just kind of sniffing at the air and probably looking over the party members, trying to realize in their dumbass ogre brains where they might know them from. Okay, that's more what I was expecting. 5, unfriendly may attack. They're ogres, they're gonna attack. All right, let's just hope we don't die. Now, because there's no surprise, it's 4d6 times 10 yards. And let's see what that gives us. Whoop. Okay, we got 10, 11. So 11 times 10 yards, so that's 310 feet. Cool. Excellent. Okay, so we are quite a ways away. Our horses move 80 in a round, and the ogres travel at a whopping 30 in a round. Okay. So I imagine what we're going to do is we're probably just going to consider the opportunity that we might be able to club these guys and kill them. They have a ton of HP, and I think we might do the same thing we did last time, where it's like, if we can outrun them and skirt them, we're going to try to do that. There's a part of me that's also thinking, like, if we can kill one and, you know, shock them, we might be able to get some real money off of them. Because for anybody who doesn't know, the ogres, outside of their lair, carry a sack containing 1d6 times 100 gold. And I'll tell you what, wouldn't that not be some sort of karmic justice that we beat the beat the cheese and crackers out of these ogres and be able to get a chunk of change out of them, right? So I think what we're gonna do is, because, you know, the ogres, they move 30, and we, the party, will move 80. We're gonna wait them out. So the first round, we're not even gonna roll initiative. We're just gonna go ahead, we're gonna clear the gap by 110 feet. They're gonna move forward. We're both gonna move closer to each other, 220 feet away from one another. And at this point, I wanna consider the party's ranged attacks. Because again, when it comes to people like Idalar, who have a ranged spell, people like Tamond, who can toss a javelin 90 feet, and people like our good buddy, Zion, she shoots at 150. So I'm thinking, if we move one more integer towards each other, we'll be able to end our turn by shooting, because that's how that works. And I want to double check the spell range for our chromatic orb, because that would be very cool to be able to hit them with the chromatic orb. Unfortunately, chromatic orb is a range of 60. So on the next turn, when we give it up again and we let them, we move forward and we don't bother rolling for the initiative, we go running up to each other, and we'll end the turn with Zion firing an arrow in. Now, she's going to get a hefty penalty, -1 because of the range, as well as cover from the trees, so that's definitely a miss. So on horseback, she fires off and she curses aloud. The rest of the party prepare here, wondering what's going to happen next. So I'm thinking on the next turn, what we're going to do is Todrick's probably going to be gnashing to go up there and go and fight. I don't know that I want him to do that, because that's going to get very dangerous very quick, because he's going to get outnumbered. So we're going to hold back. We're going to have our melee characters chill right here. You know, I'm going to go ahead and just draw the 5 ogres running up, and we have our party members. We have Todrick and we have Tamond in the front, and then we have Zion and we have Idalar in the back. We've got all the little trees all over the place, and it's going to make this combat that much more complicated, because we're going to be kind of firing into it, you know? It probably would have been better if I used a different color, huh? Anyway, so now we're going to move into the next round on the initiative. You know, it probably would have helped if I announced who was what color. All right, the party are going to be this fancy one. It kind of almost looks like one of those gummy worms where it's like the half red, you know. Anyway. Okay, so the party lose the initiative, 2-4. So the ogres are going to charge up at this point at 110 feet away. Our party see them march up, and they get to about 80 feet away. Okay, so now the party, on their turn, we're gonna have our friends throw some ranged attacks. Again, we're gonna have kind of an issue here because Zion now is within a normal range, so she takes no penalty other than the trees. And with a 9, that's another miss. Okay. Todrick, obviously he's not gonna throw a spear. The short bow, yep, we already did that. And our javelin is at 90 feet. So technically, our buddy Tamond can throw one of his javelins. He's going to take it at a -1, but he has a +1, so we're rolling natural. 10. So unfortunately, the ogres do have an armor class of 15. Our THAC0 of 19 means we'd need to roll a 14 or higher to actually hit. Okay, so that's not great. We got to start thinking about our exit strategy here. So in the next turn, the party are going to hold yet again and prepare for a charge. And we're going to roll for initiative as the ogres continue to charge up, hooting and hollering. Party lose the initiative again. So the ogres charge up an additional 30, closing the gap to 50 feet. Okay. Again, we're going to go ahead and we're going to fire. We're going to do our ranged attack. 19, that's actually a hit. So we're gonna D6, no bonus, no penalty. Whoop. Okay. 2 points of damage on one of the ogres. So one of the ogres, they start off with 19, it says in the book. I'm not gonna roll for all their individual health, but he's at 17 now as he gets hit by a single arrow. Again, we're gonna have Tamond toss another one of his javelins. He has 5 in total. Okay, so that's a miss as he tosses another one. And now, that ogre in the front, he is going to have to make a spell save. Of course, the ogres get the good rolls. He needed a 14 or higher, and he got a 17, so the spell effect of the chromatic orb does not work. But he does immediately take the damage, and this is where we're going to tell if the combat's working against us or not. 2 points of damage, so holding up his little crystal, the ray of bright gleaming light shines out of the crystal and sears that same ogre in the front. He closes his eyes and continues running forward mercilessly at the party. Okay, so now this is where it's going to get real rough. I think the party are aware that this is a dangerous situation, and I don't think that they're going to want to get tied up with fighting these guys much longer. So what I think we might do is we might choose to move half of our movement speed back and fire again. Okay. Okay, the ogres, again, win the initiative with a 6. So the ogres charge up, thinking that they're just about to close the gap. And then the party move half their speed back, bringing us to 60 feet away in total. Okay, and now that we've moved, we're going to have our party members shoot and throw. So we'll first shoot with Zion. Zion got 4, so that's a terrible miss. And Tamond's going to throw one of his 3 last javelins. 5, another terrible miss. Not good. Okay. Now, the ogres are stupid, and I'm kind of curious to see if the ogres are going to learn what's going on here with the skirting back and forth business. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to see, I don't know, maybe we'll roll a morale, okay? And then if the ogres lose on it, they're going to realize what's going on here and let them go. I'm going to have to roll a 10 or higher for them to back off. 10, okay. So the ogres, realizing what's going on here, are going to attempt to turn back and hide amongst the trees to prevent them from doing this skirting, kiting, shooting thing. Okay, so the party sees the initiative for once, and before the ogres start running away, our party are going to fire in yet again. I'm hoping for a couple crits. Okay, 15, we needed a 14, we have the range. So in that case, Zion is able to shoot and able to hit one. 4 points of damage, pretty good. So that brings this guy down to 11. Okay, and then, come on, Tamond. Okay, 11. So unfortunately, that is a miss. So he throws, and now he's only got, I think, just the 2 javelins left. Yeah, not great. And now, yeah, the ogres on their turn are gonna hang out by the trees, keeping the gap to 60. So now that they've moved amongst the trees, the party realize they're probably not going to win this one by any sort of a fair game here. So I think what we'll do is we'll just flee. And the party are going to turn tail and run their way out of this encounter and scram out of here. I know, kind of anticlimactic, but I'd rather the party stay alive than, you know what I mean, end up toast thanks to these goobers. So the party leave. I think now that we're fleeing, we're probably going to move southeast now. Let's roll our 20 and our 8. Okay, 16. 16 is something different. I'm not totally sure off the top of my head what forest turns into on that. So forest, 16, nope, it's plains. Okay, cool. Easy enough. So we got simple plains with nothing fancy going on. Now, again, because this is the third day, we're gonna boost our modifier up. So the first time we get a 1 through 3, it'll count as a proccing a special thing. And 3 it is. So now that we move again into the forest, continuing southeast, we got a random thingy. So let's go ahead and roll and see what we got. Again, on our little table, 1 to 2 is ruins and relics, 3 and 4 is lured layers, 5 to 6 is rivers, roads, and islands, 7 and 8 is castles, citadels, 9 to 10 is temples and shrines, and 11 to 12 is villages and towns. So let's see. On the 12, 7, that gives us castles and citadels. Intriguing. All right, I'm gonna pull our binder down here so we can roll this one up. Let's do it. Okay. Now it's castle time. So the first thing we're gonna roll to see is the castle condition. A 7 means our castle is crumbling. Ooh, okay. So let's get some deets going. We don't have a name for the castle yet. I don't know if this one's the one that has the cool castle name generator. If it is, then that would be pretty cool, because then we can come up with a nice name. Ah, castle name table. Okay. So let's see. We're gonna roll on our D100. Let's see what we get. Okay, we got 60. Okay, so 60 we get for the table, table 15. Table 15 says on a 12, a 2, this is Castle Nijo. Nijo. Castle Nijo. Okay, Castle Nijo. Okay. It is currently crumbling, and the crumbling says that we need to take a look at the crumbling table. So on the crumbling chart here, 1 gives us a garrison of troops. Okay, so there's a garrison stationed here. Okay. But a garrison of what? So, let's see, it says invader types, abandoned types, and garrison type. Okay. Cool. So I'm guessing if it's a garrison, then we might assume that they're humans or humanoids. All right, so the garrison size, we got a D6. A 1. Ooh, 1d6 times 10. This is interesting. Oh, here I go. Rolled in the tower. Oh, 4. So 40 people. Okay. Garrison morale level. Another d6. 3. They are experienced. Interesting. Makes me wonder why an experienced garrison's just hanging out here in a crumbling tower. The technical level is mercenaries. All right, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna move this. I'm gonna put this up here that it's crumbling. Not that this matters that much. And they are experienced mercenaries. And because they're mercenaries, now we can roll for the percentage here. On a D10, we're getting real crunchy, you know? A 3 for mercenary says we have 20% light footmen. Okay, so 20% of 40 would be 8. So we have 8 light footmen. And then we have heavy footmen. We have 4 heavy foot soldiers. And then we have, interesting, we have 4 crossbowmen. Okay, and then we have 8 light horses. And then we have 8 medium horses. Okay, interesting. Again, this might seem all a bit like over the top right now, but I have a feeling this might become very, very relevant if these guys are not nice. Now we're going to roll percentages to see what kind of leader we have. We have everything from fighters, clerics, alchemists, samurai, and special classes. And we got 18. That gives us a fighter. Interesting. Okay, so now the leader is a fighter. Okay, and the leader's level, holy moly, that goes high. Percentile again, 8. Oh, hold on, this might be a killable leader. I mean, okay, so a killable leader, sorry, the leader's level is 4. So we'll put him at 4 hit dice. Cool. All right, and then the leader's type. Ooh, now we got a percentile. All right, here we go. 28 gives us a human. Okay, that could have been exciting. Hold on. 46 would have been an elf. Yeah, would have been, but he's a man. Human, okay. Interesting. Okay, so we don't have to deal with any of the subtypes, but now we get to roll for our alignment. Whoop. All right, an 87 gives us a lawful evil. Ooh, see, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, now remember, half our party are evil, so that's kind of interesting. All right, now we get to roll for the disposition of this place. A 6 gives us interested. Okay. Cool. All right, and now random followers by leader type. Let's see. Fighter and samurai followers. We have a 21, and that gives us 1 sage. Ooh, so there's 1 sage there too. That's interesting. The sage we might be able to work with then, because this might be the kind of place we can go to you know, find some sort of information or something. All right, let's see. So that's all for that, and the rest is names. All right, so let's see. Mysterious finds outside the walls. Okay, this could be interesting. An 11. So outside we find a dented goblet. A dented goblet. Okay, and then passing encounter. There is a tanner outside. Interesting. And wall defenses. We have a magically protected crumbling castle. Interesting. So I'm imagining that even though the portcullis is down, or the gate is down, I'm thinking what we can do is we can suggest that for some reason there's some strange barrier that, like, chainless, the gate lifts and opens. But right now, with no sign of any mechanics to lower the gate, the crumbling castle still has its gate up. But now that the party have seen this castle in the distance, I think we should roll for a reaction as we scout the place out for a couple hours and we see that there's humans walking around, at least on the perimeter, right? We're going to get a +1 on this because they're interested, and another +1 because Zion is charismatic. Oh my goodness. Brings us up to a 13. So that means they're going to be very friendly. So as soon as we even come by the walls of this place, they are going to hail us with a horn, I'm guessing. So in the distance, we can hear the horn going off, the burp, burp, and they're calling to us, and somebody up top screams out in the distance. One of the crosswomen on the wall just yells out there and yells, "You there, please come to the gate." And as the party look kind of suspicious by the whole thing, they figure, well, you know, it's a human, and they're welcoming them in the way that they are, and it seems like nobody's in hiding, everybody's without weapons, just kind of waving them in the distance to come on over. So I imagine the party come marching over on their horses, and when they do, they probably call up to them and say, you know, like, what is this place, right? I'm imagining Tammond's probably the, well, I think Zion, being the one with the higher charisma, would probably be the one to call out to them and ask, what is this place? And they will say, this is Castle Nijo, right? And they say, who do you serve? Well, the castle is led by our leader. I'm trying to think, what's a good name for our leader? Maybe his name will be, Lyndon, and then his last name could be Gontel. Yeah. Lyndon Gontel, a lawful evil mercenary leader who is very happy to see the party coming over here. So they say that they're led by Lyndon Gontel and that they're holding this place in the borderlands. Intriguing. So I suppose the party would want to enter, right, at this point after being hailed so kindly. So the magical lock on the gate comes down, right? And the party come marching in on their horses, and inside of this crumbling castle, they could probably see that this place is in some severe disrepair. But at this point, the guards probably halt them and approach them, not with weapons drawn, but just, you know, approach them and ask them to, you know, hang out for a sec, wait for a good opportunity to meet with their leader. So I'm thinking that their leader is going to share the same exact reaction roll. Okay, so +2, so yeah, 12. Wow, so he's going to be friendly. So Lyndon Gontel, after hearing that there's been travelers spotted at the gate, armed travelers with horses and weapons and all that stuff, he wants to come meet them immediately. As he comes out, I'm imagining he's an older gentleman. He's a level 4 fighter, so he's probably got a nice weapon, some nice armor, and as he comes marching out to them on horseback, he calls out to them and says, all right, you know, state your names and your business here. And I'm imagining that the party all kind of look left and right, and again, Zion speaks for the party, introduces all of them by their first names, and says that they are travelers from the town of Validar to the west. And I'm thinking, now we can roll in our D6 Oracle. Does Lyndon Gontel know of it? I would imagine he does, but there's a chance he doesn't. So no and. So no, he does not know of this town, and by his lawful evil nature, he probably feels a little bit offended that this place exists without him knowing, and without paying him any sort of moolah. But he is a friend of the people, so I'm thinking he's probably not going to approach this in a punitive way, but instead he's going to be like, oh, you know, well, let me introduce myself. I am the protector of these lands, and clearly you don't know of how much help we've been to you people for keeping at bay our mutual enemies out here in the forest. And I'm imagining the party are probably going to look back and forth at one another and be a bit confused by this, and they're going to say that, you know, with all due respect, I'm thinking, you know, again, Zion being the pleasant one of the party is probably going to say, like, with all due respect, we have never heard of your castle. We've never seen any of your men. And unfortunately, we don't even recognize who you serve. Now, Lyndon, being the mercenary leader here, and probably not even serving any sort of a nation or a people, he's probably some sort of, you know, money-making mercenary out here who, you know, has been, I guess these are all just people for hire, but for what, I don't know. So maybe this was some offshoot plan to claim land out here on the coast of Adesia, right? And after, you know, probably struggling in this castle to find a good footing anywhere in the frontier to stay. This has probably been their build-up, and maybe they've been dwindling. So has this castle been failing? Let's roll on the Oracle. 1, yes. So yes, it's been struggling, but they haven't given up hope. So hearing that there's an entire town in the distance, perhaps there's room for some sort of amicable trade or some sort of amicable, agreement of some sort. They're lawful evil. They're evil, so they definitely feel like they should be tyrannically in charge, I would guess. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to work with them. They might be crappy and might demand a lot of terrible taxes, but, so, So at this point, when they mention that they're from Valley Dar and that they've never heard of this castle, I'm guessing Lyndon Gontel. Let's roll for reaction then. So 6, 7, 8, so it's a neutral response. He doesn't take offense to it. He's also not pleased to hear it. So he just sort of shrugs it off and says, we've been out here for nearly 2 years, hanging out here on the borderlands. And we came here off the coast. We've been here on a free mission, and we've been trying to get a foothold in this region, but it's been not so fruitful. We've run low on supplies, but we're making the best of it. And we've been dealing with a lot of probably the ogres, to be totally honest. And once the party hear this, they'll admit that there was the keep of Kagramar in between them and this castle, and they themselves, the party that is, were able to uproot some of the ogres as well as some of the goblins. Now, I'm guessing at this point, Lyndon is probably impressed by this, and after hearing that, he has a level of respect for them. Probably looks at the idea of trying to control Valley Dar and sees these guys as maybe being some of the most important people from that place. But judging by their lack of good armor, or the fact that they look hungry and dirty, he probably second guesses that. So I'm guessing at this point, Lyndon is going to probably at this stage, he's probably going to say something to the effect of, I think it would be beneficial for both of us if the men of my castle offered you the same protection that we've offered to this area around us. So I think it's fair that I send some people over with myself. I'm gonna send an emissary or something. I'm gonna travel to Valley Dar and speak with your elder, and we're gonna negotiate some sort of peace or something like that between us, just to get an idea of what's going on. Now, I'm imagining the party are going to be able to see through this and recognize that the castellan here, our leader, Lyndon Gontel, is probably looking like he's up to no good with this, and they can probably see between the lines. But let's roll to see on the Oracle. Are the party, I don't think that it's fair that we roll for that. I think it'd probably be pretty clear based on the way he talks about it, but maybe what we'll do is roll a, yeah, let's go ahead and roll on it. Is it safe to say that the party know that Gontel is hoping to basically conquer Valley Dar? 3, yes and. So yes and, they know he's not going to be all too kind and understanding about this. Maybe Zion is going to attempt to talk him down. So with this, she's going to say, I recognize that there's money to be made out here in the frontier, and that there are plenty of people who would pay dearly for protection, but Valley Dar is safe, and Valley Dar has a lot of people to protect it, and we don't need outside protection, especially from so far away. So let's see how this reaction goes. Okay, so 5, 6, 7, so that's neutral. So I'm imagining Lyndon approaches this and he just sort of chortles and he says, well, you were barely able to get here in one piece from the way it looks. How am I supposed to believe you're even going to make it home safely? Perhaps I should send men over to protect you on your way. And at this point, the party again are going to say, no, it's not necessary, and I think it's probably best if we open up trade, but nothing of a protective relationship. Now at this point, the party are sort of acting as ambassadors here, but this feels like it's more like damage control, right? The party are probably looking at this and saying to themselves like, I know we didn't just walk out here into the forest, stick our foot into the bee's nest, and go running home with all the angry bees. So I think they probably feel responsible, knowing that they're gonna have to hope nobody follows them home, you know? So at this point, after saying it's not necessary and it's probably for the best that you don't, I'm going to say that this bringing us, you know, again, he wants to work with them. So this brings us to an 8. I'm going to -1 because I think that that friendliness is kind of wearing off and he's starting to recognize this group of scroungy people are trying to kind of tell him what to do. So at this point, Lyndon says, at this point, it's not a matter of what you think. It's a matter of what I plan to do. And so now, and again, trying to diffuse the situation, I think Zion's probably going to just try to charm him a little bit and say, now listen, I believe that you're strong enough and mighty enough to protect our people. But you also have to recognize that we would be better as allies than have you spread your resources so thin. It seems that the people here in this crumbling fort, respectable as it is, would be better off protecting one place rather than spreading equally amongst the two, right? Okay, so that brings us to a 9. So the 9 seems like he's going to be less hungry on this one and he's instead going to be more understanding. So I think with an uneasy response to this, the Castellan, Mr. Lyndon Gontel, is going to look at them and say, fine, for now, we will open up trade. We will send some people over. We'll open up some of our traders that we have here, people we have that are our tradesmen. We'll send them over your way and we'll open up trade. We do have some things we need, so this will probably be for the best to keep it this way for now. But the future, it's not so decided. Now I'm thinking that because we're on kind of questionable terms, the party might find it best to stay here for the night and keep it one eye open, you know? So I'm imagining they're going to ask if they can stay here for the evening. A 6 is no and. So when they ask if it's all right to stay here for the evening, Lyndon says, if you were under my protection, I would of course allow this, but you're not. So no, you may not stay here, and if I find you outside of the walls, I might consider you to be spies. So it's probably best that you leave here and you don't come back unless you have something to trade. Okay, so that's not really what I expected to run into. But yeah, that sure was what it was. So the party altogether are pretty well not in the mood to test Lyndon or his men, who all seem to be armed at this point. And as the party slowly step back and start to leave this place, they can tell that the portcullis gate closes, and they're very curious to see if maybe they have opened up something of a can of worms for the people of Valley Dar. So I guess having only traveled 14 miles, the party might want to try to make a decent distance away from this place in order to be safe. So let's go ahead and get back to that travel we love so much, shall we? All right, so traveling from forest, let's go ahead and roll a D8, which now has reset to a 1 for fancy schmancy things. Oops. So we have forest and nothing fancy. All right, that brings us to 22. The party are going to continue southeast. We got 6. So forest again brings us to 30. Ooh, well, almost took up my light. Okay, now I think we've come kind of a far way out. Maybe we should wrap it south. Okay, we got a 16 and a 7. Interesting. So a 16 for traveling in the wilderness. Through a forest, 16 becomes plains. Right, yeah, we already had this. Okay, very good. And since it's plains, it'll bump us to 36. Looks like we got one more tile left in us. So continuing south through plains, we got, ooh, interesting. We're gonna end our travel in the plains at another random encounter. And by random encounter, I mean a random location. So let's see what we got, shall we? On another D12. A 5. Rivers, roads, and islands. Okay, so let's go to our rivers, roads, and islands. Let's see. I think what we'll do is, because they have it set up that there's rivers and roads, sort of split on a D10 to see if we run into a river system or if we run into roads. I think it's safe that we roll it and see what we get. It looks like it's 1 through 6 is our would be rivers, and 7 through 12 would be roads. So let's see. Interesting. Okay, a river. Cool. And since I got a 5, it seems like it'll be pointing diagonally this way in the plains, southwest. So let's see, let's roll 2d6 and we'll see what shape of river we got. Just as a point of reference for our rivers, on the 2d6 roll, we can get one of these. So let's see what we got, shall we? Move it, tower. 8. Interesting. So 8 is a curve. Now again, because it's pointing in that direction, but we got 5, so it's pointing this way. If we were to rotate it, it looks like that would move 1, 2. Yeah, because this would have to move 2, 1, 2. So this would move 1, 2. So it'll be a little macaroni pointing like that. Cool. Excellent. So I'll put that on the map now. Okay. So the party are going to spend the night by the river. And cool. So I'm imagining the party are probably going to sit there and just enjoy the nice tranquility of being on the riverside. I think the party are going to be very worried that they might be tailed by the Castellan's men, so they're probably going to keep an eye open at all times for any sort of danger that might follow them. But yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's go to day number 4, shall we? The weather says that it is a clear and moderate day with a high of 72. Not bad. Okay, now that we're at the river, I think that we might have a better chance of getting some food. So I'm thinking we're gonna do for food, we'll do 1 through 3, and we'll get something to eat. 3, nice. So 6 potential, 3 meals for the day. So we only have to cover 1. Okay, so 11 meals. Random encounters. For the plains, we get a random encounter on a 1. Cool. I was gonna say, what could go wrong? Okay, so now I think the party are probably gonna follow the river, to be honest. I think that makes a lot of sense, you know? The question is, are we gonna go south and follow the river back to the land we came from? Or are we gonna follow it further to the west? I mean, to the east, sorry. I know my directions, it's okay. Don't worry about it. All right, I think we're gonna go south. We're gonna follow the river south. So now traveling along the river is gonna be a little tricky just because we're gonna have to roll to see what the river looks like every time, you know, we're moving. And then we're gonna have to roll for our individual spaces. So let's see. So going south, the plains remain the plains. And there's nothing fancy to be seen. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's see what our river looks like. A 9. 9, as far as the shape of the 9 goes, we get this interesting, super brachiated little delta. So let's go ahead and put that on. Okay. Now I think because we've come so close to the coastline, I think it's safe to say that we should, well, I think we should put that little bit of river that's pointing directly south and change it to like actually, I don't know. Yeah, pointing directly south, I think we'll just make that coastline. I think that that's fair based on like the coast of Adesia. I think it'd be weird if all of a sudden there's just landmass that we didn't know about. So I'm gonna plug that one in too, right there. Okay, so now after having traveled the initial 6 miles along the river, we can move on to the next one, following the river path to the southwest. Okay, so it turns to forest. Let's see, what does the river do? A 6 gives us a nice weird bend. Interesting, so it's gonna loop around to the side beside it. Cool, so it's gonna kind of loop back up. Very weird. You know I usually talk about how much I love how the maps look, but I feel like these, with the river system and everything, this map looks pretty wonky, all things being equal. All right, let's roll to see the next tile following the river. All right, so it's gonna stay forest. We got a 4. So 4 gives us another weird brachiation pattern of river. Okay. Again, our river system looks pretty ugly right now. But I think now maybe we'll just keep following it north and seeing what it leads to. Hopefully we won't get too close to the castle. All right, so it's going to turn to plains, nothing fancy. And with a 7, it's a straight line up. Intriguing. Okay, and because it's plains, bumps us to 20. All right, let's see what we got. Now that we're just river dudes now. And Zion, the river lady. It's going to turn to forest, and with an 8, it's going to start veering off. Cool. Again, because we're traveling to the forest, bumps us to 28. Okay, let's roll it again. Cool. So 18 from the forest. I actually don't know. I always say I don't know, and then it ends up being kind of what I assumed it was going to be. But 18 from the forest becomes hills. Interesting. And we're going to curve around hills, maybe? Let's see. Since it's kind of a weird bendy shape, it makes sense that maybe the water comes from a spring in the hills. Unfortunately, because it's the hills, it's also going to cost us extra movement, bringing us to 36. And we are very close to the castle, so I don't think the party feel comfy just staying here. Oops. Let's see, so 12 and a 5. 5 gives us this little Y kind of shape, and 12 means that it's gonna go to mountains, actually. Huh. All right, so with that Y shape on the mountains like this, it looks, again, kind of strange, and I kind of don't like that you can see the river kind of following the way we're walking in this weird zigzag. But I don't know. Now that we're on mountaintop, though, I think we should do that little trick we were talking about where we can kind of see around the ring. So let's go ahead and roll starting from, we'll go clockwise around the bottom. So 4 means it'll be mountains to the south. To the southwest, it'll be hills. And to the west itself, it'll be hills as well. So let's plug that in right now. Now, this also brings us up to the full 45, or we were able to travel 48, but 45. And now let's see where the 2 rivers that break off of here go. To the south, we have 8. So this one's going to curve. And another 8, so that one's going to curve as well. Okay, I'll plug those in. All right, so you can see from the rivers, it's pretty congested, but I may have stretched a little bit to connect those 2, but I think that at least makes it a little bit more sensible that, like, there's springs in the mountains, clearly, and they seem to just be going downhill from where they're starting. So that's, that's fine and dandy for me. All right, so that's the end of today's travel. Okay, so brings us to day number 5. Let's check the weather. Weather in your area. And we've got windy, 75 degrees. Not bad. All right, let's see. Can we hunt? 1 to 2. Nothing. Random encounters in the mountains is a 1 through 3. 1. Ha ha ha. Who would have thought? It's been too peaceful for too long. Maybe that smelly castellan found us after all, hanging out in the river. Shouldn't be hanging out in his river. Okay, so let's see. We've got mountains. We need a D8 and a D20. Let's see what we got. D8, D20. A 2 and a 4. So a 2 is a dragon. Oh. Table 1, dragon. And we've got 2, a black dragon. Well, that's pretty weird. A black dragon in the mountains. Okay. Let's see. So black dragon encounters. I've had people, when they talk about running into things like dragons in this game, they've said in the past that it's like, that could be pretty game breaking because, I'm basically one gush away from being just absolutely destroyed, right? And so the question is, like, would a dragon just be hanging out and flying around? I mean, maybe. I don't think they're just walking around looking for something to snack on. And especially because this one's up in the mountains, it seems more likely that this dragon is probably flying, right? And it's probably in the air, somewhere in the distance, and the party, because it's a dragon, can probably see it, right? Now, I know we're near the coast, and we're near a bunch of rivers, so there's probably gonna be wetlands somewhere around here. So here's my pledge. We're not gonna run into this thing at a reasonable distance. We are gonna roll to see if we spot each other. But I think if we encounter a bit of wetlands, the dragon will have a lair there. I think that's fair. So let's roll to see if they spot one another. So the dragon, which I'm gonna pull a black dragon just so that, just so that we're being kosher. I'm not freaking out. I don't know if you can hear my silent panic that we might just get absolutely 86 by a black dragon. Yeah, it says that we dwell in swamps and marshes. It says that obviously we have the breath weapon, we're chaotic. There are 1d4 to be encountered in the wild. Chances of being asleep is 40%. Chances of languages and spells. Okay. Okay, so very good. So let's roll first percentile just to see if this thing talks, because that would be kind of interesting. So nope, it does not talk. It's bestial. Cool. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, dragons, it doesn't seem like... Doesn't seem like there's anything about them that makes them that much better off to seeing anybody. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and roll for spotting. The party are only surprised on a 1. Well, pardon my French there, sorry. And then the dragon will only see them on a 4 through 6. Okay, so the party travel wisely, very quietly, and amongst the rocks, knowing that out in the open, the bald face of the mountaintop, even though they're traveling across the rivers and they're enjoying the delicious spring water, they also are aware that they're kind of sitting ducks. Let's also roll to see how many dragons there were. 3. 3 dragons apparently in this random encounter. Okay. Okay. So the dragons don't spot them, but they don't even notice the dragon flying overhead. So I'm gonna keep true to my promise that if we run into a marsh, the dragon will live there. But luckily, the party don't notice anything of a dragon, and the dragon doesn't notice them. Oh gosh. All right, so let's continue traveling. I think we might be in the territory we want to probably start looping it back home. So we're in the center mountain, and I think we might travel southwest. I'm so bad at that tonight. Southwest, and then we'll follow the river that way through the hills. So traveling into the hills costs us an immediate 8. Okay, so let's get rolling. All of our goodies. Since we didn't get a random location... Yeah, since we didn't get a random location yesterday, we proc on a 1 to 2. Ooh. Okay, so we got one. Okay, so it stays hills, and there's a special location. So let's go drumming that up. Oh, also, the 5. We have that weird river that's got the Y shape. Cool. Okay. So, since we travel into the hills, now we got our random thingy here on the river. Now, on the river, that, it makes sense we might have something on a river, just because, it seems like kind of a hub, right? Somewhere where we'd run into a lot of things. Everybody needs water, right? That's biology, am I right? Am I right, dudes? All right, 12 and 11. There is a village out here. Let's make a village, shall we? This is something really fun because, with a village, that implies we're gonna have more opportunities for interesting stuff, interesting people, things to do, right? So let's get generating, shall we? Village, I think it's safe to say that we should maybe roll up the village name first. I don't know why it's always something that I'm like, I feel like we need to have the name before we begin. And for some reason they always put the name at the end. And I'm like, I'm never a huge fan of that. If I remember correctly, it's D20 by D20. So let's roll the first one. 4, 12. So 4, 12 gives us Charles. Okay. Charles. And then we have 816 gives us, 816 gives us Charles Ross. Huh, Charles Ross. Okay, that's not a terrible name. Charles Ross. Interesting. Village in the hills on the river. Cool. Okay, so the current leadership, here we go, little tower. Whoop. 5. We have a village leader. Okay, so village leader type gives us a D8. And let's see what we got. A 4 gives us a bailiff, a level 1 fighter. Okay, so we're gonna have something of a tough guy in charge. So let's see. So we're gonna have fighter, 1 hit die, and their name will be, actually let's roll evens. It's a man, odds, it's a woman. Okay, odds. So her name will be, how about Inala? Okay, Inala. Cool. And leadership can call upon, let's roll our d6 for this. 2, they can call upon 2d6 locals to fight for them. Okay. The overall leadership disposition. 2, friendly. Huh. Cool. That's nice. I love that. Okay, and then it has rules for the numbers of streets. I don't really get into that kind of nitty-gritty, but let's do our populations and shops. Okay, so our population, we're gonna have to roll percentile. 69. Nice. 69 gives us 240. Okay, and with 240, the population, we get 5 shops. All right, so now let's roll to see what level of technological level we get. Everything from 1 is anarchy to 11 is a dictatorship. So let's see how this goes. On our D12, we got a 6. 6 is tributary. Okay, so it sounds like they're, so it seems like they're working for a much larger group. Who that is, I think the clear choice would be that they're currently under the, at least direction or leadership of our good buddies at Castle Noji. Or Nijo? Nijo. Okay, so I think that makes sense that this lady at Charles Ross, Inala, she probably works underneath the castle and for their protection. Okay, so as a tributary, let's see the village attitude. Oh, as a tributary, we also get 2 government buildings. Their attitude in the village is a 7, so that is polite indifference. Okay. I'm sure with their bad taste in their mouth after being ruled over by the castle, I'm sure they're not very friendly towards outsiders. Tributaries, let's see, we get to roll 5 on this D20 for shops. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll all 5. Anything we get are duplicates. I'm just gonna say whatever, and we're just gonna ignore it. So if I remember correctly, there's might be a little note here. It says, village shops, Okay, so it says roll for no more than 1/3 of the shops in that category. Okay, so that means that we'll roll for 2 of the shops. Sorry, this is a process. We'll roll for 2 of them in the tributary category. We got a 3 and a 2, so that gives us a windmill builder and silk goods. Okay, so we've got silk, and I guess we'll just say that there is a windmill. Because a windmill builder, I'm like, sure. Sorry, I'm not trying to give it away that I don't want to have a windmill builder out here. But then it says we can go to lesser forms now. So we can go to oligopoly. Maybe what we'll do is for the last 3, we'll roll for, each one will go 1 table down, and we'll get another shop from a table below. So from the table of oligopoly, we got a money changer. Interesting. Okay, and for the next table, oops. Jeez. Okay, for the next table down, we got, for a religious state, we've got a navigation shop. Interesting. I mean, I guess if we're close to the coast, it would make sense. Maybe somebody who makes compasses. And then the last one will be for an agrarian, and we got a 19, so that is a bricklayer. Okay, cool. So that makes sense with the river through the mountains. Okay. Interesting. So the place is all full of brick buildings, and yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? Okay, and now we'll roll for our government buildings. Tributary, we get 2 government buildings. So let's see what we got. We got an 11 and an 8. So for a tributary, we got a citadel, nice, and a town square. Cool. This place is really come together. It's interesting though, because our leader is only a level 1 character. So I'm like, you'd think that would be kind of, you know, having a full citadel and all that stuff. You'd think that, I don't know, the place might be a little bit underprotected. Let's see. As far as defenses, I think a better table for defenses, we haven't used this since like the first game. But I think for settlements, what we can do is we'll roll for the, here we go. So we'll do a D8. Now, since it's kind of larger, maybe what we'll do is we'll roll 2 D8s and we'll see what we get for defenses. We'll ignore doubles. Can I just have dice not go flying out of this stupid thing? Here I was thinking I was making a major upgrade by getting a dice tower, and here I am, a slave to my dice tower. 7 and a 2. So a 7 and a 2 gives us a moat around the place and a wooden palisade. Which again, makes sense. You know, we're on a river out here in the hills, so I imagine we're gonna have a good water system that we can kind of entrench the entire place with, in the citadel in the middle. Now, I imagine this place probably also has a lot of these general locations. A well, obviously. With the rivers, I don't know if we'd necessarily need it, but I think, you know, a market and a tavern certainly makes sense to have those. So we'll put those in as well. Market and a tavern. Okay, so now that we've got a tavern, let's real quickly, well, before we get diving into the tavern, why don't we real quick see if there's a secret. On a 1 on a D6, there's a secret. A 1. Cool. Okay. Now we've got a D12 for our secret in this little town here. A 4. Eternal youth. Huh. I don't know about that. Eternal youth sounds very weird. Huh. Yeah, I don't know about that. Let's see what else we got in here. Like, eternal youth just sounds a little bit like a secret society makes a lot more sense. So we'll say that there's a secret society operating out of this place. There's a secret society. Because I'm like, eternal youth just feels like something that would be very hard to pull off. It would make sense why this place is still here, but it just feels that much harder to like explain everything. And then, I don't know. Hate me if you want to. Post in the comments how much you hate me. I'm really sorry, guys. If we get a 1 on a D6, we'll get an event. 4, so no event. Okay, and now let's see what we can get for our tavern, and we'll see what we can get for our secret society, because I think there's a whole section here for secret societies. But let's go ahead and do our tavern. Cool. Let's see what we got for a tavern. Let's do our names. We've got a D Hundo. 67. Just apologizing to nobody. The oiled. Ugh. And then a 30. It's gonna be hard to roll a 30. I kind of wish I had my fancy D30 down here. Maybe we'll just roll till we get a number between 1 and 30. Of course, this is the time where I'm gonna get all the highest rolls, you know? Of course. 7. Okay, so oiled cauldron. Okay. Interesting. And a secret society Hmm. You know, why don't we... I'll tell you what. Why don't you come meet me back at the table? Excuse me, my wonderful dice tower. Also, my lava lamp, I'm pretty sure the light bulb died on my lava lamp. An omen. Perhaps. So, sorry to pull you back from the table at such a climactic time, but I know we were just getting to the bottom of this village and all the details for Chaldros. Now, here's the thing. This place has a secret society. It's operating under some strange tributary, so maybe there is room to argue that there is this eternal youth thing going on, and there's a secret society of people benefiting from it. So I'm gonna put down that there's the eternal youth thing. I feel bad denying denying that role, and I think, maybe you guys can help me out. Maybe in the comments, you guys can tell me an idea for a secret society that might operate in this village of Chaldros. The threat of there being the citadel. There's some defensive position here in the mountains, and there's a secret society that operates somewhere in here, and they sort of report to some higher leadership. I said that it was to the Castellan, but I kind of wonder if maybe they're just sort of pacifying the Castellan by making him think he's in charge. So what I would love for you guys to tell me, and maybe in the comments, I'd love for you to sound off and have some ideas for me. What would a secret society operating out here in the frontier in this little community? Maybe Eternal Youth is somehow tossed in here? What would a secret society look like out here? And what would they be doing? Is there some secret dungeon beneath the citadel? Is there some like creepy worship going on? I don't know. In the next episode, we'll build up the rest of the village since the party are now entering it. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Here's where the map ended off. Looks all right. I know the river system looks all kinds of yucky jumbly, but honestly, again, I really think that this map is coming together really well. And at this point, this being episode 10, I think the next episode, what I might do too, is do a little synopsis episode and just say, like, in the last 10 episodes, what have we done? What have we done? And yeah, and then we can dive right into the secret society and the rest of the town. So, yeah. I guess I'll see you guys then. Again, the turnout I had on the Facebook page when I asked the question of, without dungeoneering, where does a party make their money? And I had such a turnout on there. I'm still getting notifications of people commenting. A lot of people are giving me some real runaround answers, but it's just been super cool to have people answering these kinds of questions and engaging in the comments of the videos and everything. I love that you guys are interacting with this. I know this is a solo play thing, but I think it's more fun when there's some engagement in this, because as much as I love just doing this for myself, I mean, if I was doing it purely solitaire, I probably wouldn't be putting it online for you guys, right? But it's fun to watch this all kind of occur, to see the story come from nothingness and then just become this flourishing and interesting situation. I mean, we started in Valley Dar, now we're in Chaldros, and we're dealing with a secret society of people with eternal youth, and there's a black dragon flying around, And yet we're still broke. Anyway, I'm gonna leave you guys on that one. Thank you for watching, thank you for commenting and liking and all that stuff. Please share the video with anybody you think might like this. Comment, like it, subscribe, whatever the heck people tell you people to do anymore. But yeah, I'll see you next time, okay? So thanks for watching. Goodbye.